What is going on, guys? It's your boy Edward V, and today I wanted to do something special. Today I wanted to talk about a YouTuber by the name of Rachel Sharp. She did a video on her channel called My Experience with Intermittent Alternate Day Fasting. Now, this is actually a positive video. So I'm talking about another person in a positive light, not in a debate or a rebuttal. Although I am very respectful when I do my rebuttals, I just make sure that it's about the substance, that it's about the actual studies, the scientific research, the data that exists out there. I never make it personal in any way, shape, or form. But I was watching her video, and the thing about Rachel Sharp's video is that it's not the first video to do something like this. It's not the first video to talk about their experience with a certain diet or protocol. But as I was watching her video, something clicked in my mind because it was very detailed and it was done very well in terms of how she told her story, that it clicked with me and more than it's ever clicked with me before in terms of the importance that an anecdotal evidence or data that can be anecdotal or data that comes from anecdotal evidence, how important that can be to the overall point of trying to dissect information to get to the best position. Now, I've always been an advocate for putting studies first before anecdotal evidence, and I'm still that guy, because I do believe that when you're grabbing a large audience, when you're grabbing a very wide audience, you want to give them the best value possible. So studies that have controls set in them, that pit one group versus another, that looks at isocaloric intake to get to the biological element of what is truly going on between this group versus that group, replicating that in multiple other studies, compiling them in meta-analysis. I do believe that that is incredibly valuable. But what Rachel Sharp did for me as I was watching it, and I watched the whole video, and I'll link the video in the description because it's a really good video to see how a person's journey through the intermittent fasting protocol or alternate day fasting protocol, how that works. But it clicked with me that there's so much value in someone's personal experience even for someone else. And the reason that there's value there is because that's what's lacking from any studies. Studies are fantastic for giving a broader picture, but the participants never get to explain what they felt, how they persevered for 6 months to do this protocol, what they went through, what their life was like as they were doing this protocol. So I kind of started imagining Rachel as a participant in a study, and how her personal experience was an insight that you don't see in the data when you're looking at research. And what she was saying was very spot on in terms of the things that the roadblocks that people get to when they're trying to do a certain protocol. Now, her journey resembled a lot of what my audience is always asking me about in terms of what's going on with them. And it also resembles why a lot of people had quit. She's hit those points where you could have quit, where she could have stopped, but she did not. She kept going. And this is why I'm making this video, because although there are studies out there, and trust me, that is the thing that I'm going to keep pushing, because there's already I'm entering this battlefield in fitness where there's already a negative connotation attached to fasting. And I'm trying to level the playing field. I'm trying to show when there's limitations in studies. I'm trying to show when there's positive elements, or if there's problems with methodologies or problems with sample size. I'm always trying to bring it to light. And that's why I do my rebuttals. But I also want to touch on the fact that a personal experience is much more intimate in terms of what you can go through when doing these protocols, as opposed to just knowing what the results will be after you do the protocol. So Rachel Sharp talks about how she suffered through a lot of anxiety from being overweight. It was a lot of psychological anxiety. She was bullied when she was younger because of her weight. So she struggled with weight for a long time. And one thing that I find to be very interesting is that A lot of times when I see people that have transformation photos, and this touches on the psychology of when you're overweight, you always see them with someone. Like you always see them, either someone's next to them, or they're in a group, or they're always cropping themselves out. If you ever pay attention to these things, because I'm always like looking at like similarities throughout the world, like just trying to piece together puzzles that probably don't exist, but in my head they do sometimes. When I'm looking at these pictures of before and after, I'm always noticing, and I try to reverse engineer how I felt during those times. I'm always noticing that people tend to be with other people in the photos. And then like I think about how I felt. And even me, for example, I was 230 pounds at my biggest. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's not a lot. You should just not even talk about it because you didn't weigh that much anyways. But everybody has their insecurities. Like I felt insecure at that weight. I'm only 5'9", that's my height. So that weight was not a comfortable weight for me. But I remember that I never took pictures because there was never any desire for me to take pictures. I didn't want to see myself in a photograph. So the only photograph that I do have, I was like 215 pounds or 220 pounds. I'm not exactly sure. And it was only because I was walking through the living room, and one of my cousins from like 2 or 3 years ago that I haven't seen in a while came in, and my mom was like, hey, whoa, no, don't go to your room. I need to take a picture with you guys before you leave. And then I'm like, okay, sure, I'll take a picture. She snaps a picture. Had she not snapped that picture, I would never have even any type of a before picture. That's literally the only before picture I ever had. And I cropped, my cousin out, put it up so that it can, you can see the differences and stuff. But it's something that you don't think about. It's in the back of your head, but then you notice with all these photos with other people that do transformations that they tend to be in pictures with other people. And it's because they don't want to take pictures. Once they reach weights that they're very comfortable with, or they start seeing progress, you start seeing so many pictures with them being by themselves in the picture. And that's a wonderful thing because they start feeling confident in themselves. They start feeling confident in the way they look. That psychologically can be very, very healthy for you. I know that I just went off the rails a little bit, but it's just something that I noticed, and it's still part of my talking point in this video, is that the psychological aspect of weight loss matters. She tried so many different other protocols, as I did. I also tried other protocols, and none of them worked for me. None of them worked for her either, until she did alternate day fasting. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people say, well, her experience is anecdotal. What does it matter? Who cares? No, it's anecdotal, but she's still a human being. So her biology can connect to you to some degree. And if you felt any of the feelings that she ever felt, then psychologically you could be in tune with her. And I know that some things that she said, I did feel back then when I was struggling to find a way to lose weight. She talked about hitting a wall and looking at the scale, and I'm so proud that she didn't let that stop her. At that point, many people stopped because she was losing weight consistently. She did really, really good. But at one point, after a few months, she went on the scale and she noticed that it went up and not down. And at that moment, she could have easily derailed her entire process. But she had the grit and the understanding to know that there was so much progress behind her that if she stopped now simply because of this little bump, that she would neglect everything she's been doing to try to get to her goal weight. So she didn't let that stop her, and she continued pushing through. And of course, the weight came down. And these are the things that I've always talked about. The scale is very misleading. The scale does not represent body fat, but a lot of people look at that scale and think, This scale will only represent body fat. If it goes up, that means I gained 3 pounds of fat. If it goes down, that means I lost 3 pounds of fat. And that is not the case. So many things can happen, which is why I'm not a fan of the scale, because the scale can be very misleading. And it stops a lot of people in their tracks. It didn't stop her. She pushed through. She also talks about the fact that she has moments where she doesn't do the fasting when she's supposed to, which is life. That's how life works, which is why you should always create exception days and have rule days. So, for example, she has a rule set for her, according to her experience, that she, according to the experience she illustrated on the video, is that she does her fasting protocol. But if something happens, if there's a get together or there's an event, she will go out to that event. And that's fantastic, because what she's building is a system that allows her to do it for the long term. It's very, very important that we understand that that is the number one thing. Longevity. How long can you adhere to a diet? You want to be able to make whatever thing you do a lifestyle change, not just a diet change and then going back, because you'll gain the weight back. That's just how it is. And those are the insights that people never hear. People hear that you can get from point A to point B. This study can tell you you can get to point B from point A by doing this. But then what happens when you're doing that and there's a roadblock, or there's some element that's stopping you from continuing to do that? That's the importance of the anecdotal evidence. That's the importance of the experience, something that I never thought about. I loved seeing people succeed with intermittent fasting. And I was loving watching Rachel Sharp's video and seeing her succeed in that, because it's another person who succeeded doing a protocol that I've been researching for so long, and that I know, works for so many people. So it's a good thing. But literally watching her video, it clicked, because I never use anecdotal evidence as a way to defend intermittent fasting, because I'm in that aggressive state where I want to put intermittent fasting on the map. I want to help people put intermittent fasting on the map. And the way to do that is to battle with the highest empirical evidence that you can, so that you can be on that level playing field versus anybody in the world. But it clicked in my head that there is an importance to the data of anecdotal evidence to understand the journey of going through a specific protocol. Another thing that she does is that she doesn't do the 500 calorie intake thing with a lot of the alternate day fasting people do, which I'm super happy, because she's allowing her body to really do that metabolic switchover, that hormonal trigger, your insulin reducing, your IGF-1 going up, the regulation in your ghrelin, leptin increase, epinephrine and norepinephrine release, this hormonal cascade that puts your body in this partitioning mode where it's specifically targeting body fat. That's happening. The study showed that intermittent fasting and that fasting protocol and being in a fasted state without consuming any calories allows you to trigger that event that can help you burn fat more effectively and more efficiently. And I'm happy that she does it that way, because I feel that she's getting the most out of it from doing it that way. So if you haven't seen her video, I definitely highly suggest it. She talks about her experience. She sits down and just breaks it down. You can see that it's really something that touched her. She was bullied when she was younger, so it really, really touched her to see that she could achieve this, because it made her feel better about herself. You just feel happy for her when you're watching this video. So I definitely want you guys to take a look at it. I put the link of the video down in the description below. And also I'll put a link to her channel if you want to go ahead and go to her channel and subscribe. I highly recommend it. She's a really good storyteller, and she told her journey in a very clear and honest way, so that if you ever hit those roadblocks, if you realize, whoa, this is literally one of the roadblocks that she hit, you know that you can power through it, because that can give you some indication of what can happen if you power through it. And I understand that everybody's different. I get that. That is an important thing, which is why studies exist, which is why I will continue to talk about the studies. But sometimes, every once in a while, You need to sit back and be able to hear how someone went through something psychologically, not just what their biological responses are to a certain protocol regimen, but psychologically, what happened to them and what did they do to persevere. All right, guys, that was my special video today, talking about Rachel Sharp's video on her experience with alternate day fasting. You guys should check it out. As I said, link will be in the description and her channel will be linked down in the description. And of course, as always, I want to thank my patrons for my Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and put their names right up here. And of course, as always, guys, I'll see you on Wednesday for another FAQ. Peace.